Wish you another great evening. Welcome to another significant landmark in most innovative micro-learning drive of Harris Plantations. Evening with an expert at Harris Plantations, session number 19. The concept agroforestry refers to cultivation and use of trees and shrubs with crops and livestock in agricultural systems. Agroforestry seeks positive interactions between its components, aiming to achieve a more ecologically diverse and socially productive output from the land than is possible through conventional agriculture. Agroforestry bridges the gap that often separates agriculture and forestry by building integrated systems that address both environmental and socioeconomic objectives. Agroforestry can improve the resiliency of agricultural systems and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Therefore, our main focus on today's session is to showcase a healthy debate on the topic of agroforestry in plantations, redefining diversity and dynamics for a viable business model. For this valuable and timely needed topic, to discuss at Evening with an Expert at Harris Plantation session number 19, we have invited one of the experts in agroforestry concept, biodiversity, and sustainable business model development, an eminent speaker on this area from the most recognized International Union for Conservation of Nature, Aggroversi, Sri Lanka office. He is Mr. Nalin Munasinghe. On behalf of our Managing Director, Dr. Roshan Rajadure, and entire team of Harris Plantations, we would like to warmly welcome you, Nalin, to this session. It is my prime duty to introduce Mr. Nalin Munasinghe to Harris Plantations team. Mr. Nalin Munasinghe is academically qualified with obtaining a BSc degree with honors in agriculture, specializing in agricultural extension and economics from the University of Peradeniya, a master's degree in economics from the University of Colombo, and a postgraduate diploma in marketing from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, UK. He served more than 15 years at FAO of the United Nations by coordinating and working with a number of key government counterparts, private sector organizations, including chambers, civil society organizations, community-based organizations, and the media counterparts. His position at the World Bank as the National Consultant, Private Sector Liaison, and the Business Development Manager at Oxfam, Sri Lanka, were key strengths for him to play a key role in terms of developing business models in relation to the agroforestry. It is my pleasure as well to be with Mr. Munasinghe in the project team of Sri Lanka National Agroforestry Project in tea and coconut sector, which is a collective massive project to focus on piloting an agroforestry approach in tea and coconut sector in Sri Lanka, combining the efforts of Netherlands Enterprise Agency, IUC in Sri Lanka, University of Peradeniya, and Dutch agroforestry expert team. With that brief introduction, with warm wishes, I would like to invite Mr. Nalin Munasinghe, my good friend, to take over this session from here onwards. Over to you, Nalin. Nalin, your mic is muted.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Anuruddha. Thank you very much, Mr. Roshan Rajadure, the Managing Director. Thank you so much for this opportunity and also to learn and share. Actually, we are also learning from you all. So it's a learning and a sharing session. This is how we all understand this session. So thank you for the introduction as well, Anuruddha, my colleague. Thank you so much. I hope today's session will also be a very important session for all of us to see how best we can learn first about little bit about agroforestry, because this is a very upcoming and a very emerging topic in the plantation sector in Sri Lanka, not only in tea, even in coconut, you name, so that we really, we have started engaging in agroforestry models in the sector simply because of the benefits that it, starts giving us in a situation where most of our plantations have been severely affected due to climatic impact, climatic condition. So I personally believe this is a timely concept, timely initiative, but we need to know it properly. We need to know it right, and we need to bring the model right. Otherwise, we are not going to be really benefited on these kind of important models. So what I'm trying to do today is to bring a couple of information, my own experience, maybe some experience coming from one of our projects, and also some of the experience that I have gathered from other experts in the market today, and to see whether we can learn something. So once again, thank you, Anuruddha, for giving me this opportunity. I have a couple of slides to share, but more than that, I believe in what we talk and what we learn each other. Slides are always important for us to guide, for an objective to be achieved. So therefore, I'm still using, but let's have a good discussion at the after the presentation. I hope my colleague Nalin Pereira is my actually IUCN's senior program officer. He was also to join today. So if he joins, so that he also might join me in the discussion session, so that we can bring more knowledge from the IUCN end. So with that, I hope I am audible and my slides are very clear, Anuruddha. Is that right?
Yes, Nalin, you're audible and your slides are so clear. Yeah, and you can go to presentation mode, Nalin.
That's right. I'm going to do that now. Okay, great.
Thanks. It's good now.
So the topic actually Anuruddha and myself we discussed this kind of topic, but then the information that I'm bringing here, maybe dynamics and the business modeling part as well, a little maybe, but more than that, maybe for somebody say who is not say very knowledgeable on agroforestry. So therefore, I have added a couple of slides to impact, in fact, to talk about the impact of agroforestry on plantation sector as well. Just to give you a little bit on the background to the agroforestry, right? I mean, we all know even though we are a small island, we are already impacted with this climate. The impact of climate change has become, very severe droughts, very, usual common landslides, right? So these are all problems that we see. Therefore, they have impacted even the plantation sector. In particular, your yields, your water bodies, your water sources, then the microclimatic conditions, the soil conditions, these all have been affected. And it's not for the main crop. Maybe in your case, it's tea or the main plantation crop, but it is, impacting on all other elements of the microclimatic conditions, starting from fauna, flora, and you name microbial reactions as well on the surface. So this is why it is important for us to consider a topic like agroforestry, because agroforestry uniquely integrates trees into different land use systems. It's basically an integration of different crops on a common land, so that they behave like friends on a land. That is how I look at it. Friends on the earth together bring a lot of benefits. So they compete each other, but when you get the right model, when you get the right species, when you get the right conditions, obviously the synergies are very high. The synergistic effect is very high on the ground. So this is why agroforestry practices are vitally important to enhance the resilience of our lands, resilience of our human beings, resilience of the plantations, you name. It's very important for us to go for this important topic. Just to highlight a couple of adverse impacts that we get from climate change on especially agriculture and forestry are basically the danger that it brings on the natural assets. As I told you, the soil, water, right, fauna, flora, it's very high. And at the same time, it creates different pest and disease attacks, because because of the change of the climatic conditions, because that means the change of temperature, change of humidity, and all, and that creates favorable substrates for different other pests and diseases to come, be detrimental for us. And also, we don't have time to talk all, but I hope you all understand. At the same time, finally, what happens, because of lack of crop, lack of food, the food insecurity of the country in general, right, might also be affected and will be high. So these are some of the important points that I need to bring as a background to this presentation, but also would like to remind you a little bit on the book definition for the agroforestry term, since if somebody has forgotten, like as we all know, it is kind of a land use system. When you see an agroforestry model, is a land use system that we always see, which tries to maintain or maybe even improve the yields of a particular land. So basically, it improves the land productivity because it's a combination of food crops. No, it could be annuals, it could be perennials. Maybe on top of those two, you will also have livestock component running. So altogether, what happens with the time, with different management practices that we introduce, right? It will further support the socio-cultural characteristics of the people who live in there, the animals who live in there, basically the say fauna flora, communities who live in there. So that at the end of the day, it is not just economic benefits we are going to get, but also socio-cultural impact as well. So when you take all these together, it's kind of an agroforestry model. It's kind of a different way of living, on a land, right? So obviously it has a lot of benefits. Now, if somebody asks, okay, what are these types of agroforestry? Very simple terms. I mean, even in this audience, if I ask this question, what do you mean by an agroforestry? Have you seen? Someone might come up and say, yes, we have seen. How? Because we have different other trees in our main, main crop or main plantation. So mostly agroforestry for many people means planting trees, on a different, agricultural land, which is also partly true. But in the world, with the technology, with the enhancement of knowledge, practices, research findings, there are a number of agroforestry models being practiced in many parts of the world, right? You might not see everything in Sri Lanka here, but a couple of types, as you can see here, are being currently practiced in different plantations, especially in coconut, and also somewhat in tea, and some other plantations like rubber even. So we can see agroforestry has already started, but not at the scale that you and I maybe expect. For the countries like, say, East Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, you can, find there are very good models. Indonesia, very good models of agroforestry, from this part of the world. Even in India, you can just search and find. Right? I'm just, trying to talk about the South Asian and the East Pacific Asian area, simply because, we are more close to them than Europe. So in particular, there are mainly 5 types that we learn. Actually, some of you guys have learned even them in the book, in the class, in the lecture, right? Just to remind you, right? One is called silver pasture. Some people say pasture, which combines trees and forage with livestock on a land, right? So it is very, sort of a balanced, prominent, agroforestry model. This alley cropping is another style where you grow a particular, mainly an agricultural crop, simultaneously with a long-term tree crop. So maybe it could be a perennial on a perennial land, or it could be an annual on a perennial land, something like that. So it's basically you grow them on strips basically, right? So it's very famous in Sri Lanka. You use gliricidia, we call it albizia, right, on alley cropping. Now this forest farming type is a little different type because it involves the cultivation of a particular high value non-timber crop, right, under the protection of a forest canopy. Now, this is not happening much, because in Sri Lanka, under forest, obviously, you don't have access, you can't do much. And that is how we've all learned. Because when it comes to a forest reserve or a strict nature reserve that, since we don't have access and we are not trying to, convert anything, but if it's an agroforestry plant, right, obviously, we have some good opportunities to go for forest farming, practices. Then this riparian forest buffers is another technique where we involve natural or re-established streams, stream side forests. You may have seen, even in Sri Lanka, you may have seen like along different streams, maybe canals or maybe even rivers, right? You can see, alongside, you see different trees are being planted, but then beyond, there might be paddy fields. There might be, even sometimes, shrub lands. But just, besides the canals or the stream sides or the streams, obviously you see there are a lot of, trees have been grown, and that's a kind of a riparian forest buffers that we maintain, especially close to the, main forests. And finally, there is this very famous windbreaks or the shelter belts, where you mostly grow in, hilly areas or maybe in areas where there is a lot of wind, because it acts as a windbreaker or wind barrier. right? Basically, we again here you go for linear plantings of trees and shrubs, right? Especially to improve the crop production and protect even people, livestock, soil, and plants, and even water from different kinds of different levels of winds during the year, or different times of the year where the wind is very high. I mean, this is practiced in the whole world. What you see in these pictures, like different types that I just told you, right? These are all pictures taken from different sources from the net and from other say other areas of the country as well. You get a couple of them in Sri Lanka. If you can see my cursor, now this beautiful picture is the so-called Candian forest garden in Sri Lanka. I mean, over 2,500 years ago, like these systems have been practiced by our ancient people in this country, and is one of the best examples for agroforestry models in the country right now. Right? I mean, we all enjoy when you go to this, especially Candy area, like you say Mimore or whatever, you go those areas, you would realize how beautiful they are, like, and they are also the models of agroforestry, right? And but in other pictures you see some somewhat organized, planned, and designed models where you try to get the maximum out of it, right? So I'm just trying to give you a couple of examples. Let me take an example from the coconut industry here. Like Professor Pushpakumar's studies in 2011, he has found in coconut plantations in Sri Lanka there are a number of agroforestry types and systems being practiced. A couple of them are I've just already explained. Like in coconut you can see agroforestry comes as an annual crop. Now you can see here in this picture, right? Now banana has been taken under coconut plantations, and sometimes perennial crops would be like even teaks, like different type of products. Then as I just told you earlier, silvopastoral systems, bring these crops and also livestock together. Glycidia, obviously in Sri Lanka, is a very interesting and a very promising model, Glycidia and the main crop. Then also you see some of the models in the coastal belt where you get coastal agroforestry systems, even coconut lands, coconut lands which are close to the coastal belt. You can see some of these coastal agroforestry systems. Home garden agroforestry, I think you all know. That's what basically we learned through the Candian home garden system. Alley cropping I just explained, and also sometimes you can see there are certain cover crops being cultivated on the coconut plantations. And even certain other crops like even pineapple you can see in this picture. So there are a lot of such mechanisms that we have tried under the coconut plantations. Now, these are some of the pictures from the coconut plantations that I have picked for you to learn what agroforestry means. So sometimes you might be wondering why you don't see much in tea, simply because we see only little. Even in Sri Lanka right now we don't see much, but I will show you a couple of pictures from tea as well. Now you can see here silvopastoral type in the coconut where you see different kinds of livestock being introduced. But for coconut, yes, it's very important and it's very easy, and obviously there are a lot of benefits coming from. But then there are certain questions when it comes to tea, because we have certain ethical and also certain managerial operational aspects to follow further. So this is very important in that sense. Now, here, what I'm trying to bring, okay, under these conditions, if we just try to understand why agroforestry. Now, always I'm taking both tea and coconut. There is a reason, as Anirudh also mentioned earlier, like, yes, IUCN is into an agroforestry, piloting, project, both in tea and coconut lands, where we all working together. Even you are a member of that, project where we have started working now. So we have a long way to go in that project for the next 3 to 4 years. And we believe that we all might be able to work together and come up with a suitable model. So if I answer this question, why agroforestry? Obviously, we know both tea and coconut, especially tea lands in Sri Lanka, is mainly a monoculture. But you can see how much have been degraded already. We see a lot of degraded lands in tea where you might not see, or you might not get the expected productivity anymore. And those are the best for us to consider for agroforestry. We can find that out, but obviously there are a lot of challenges which we'll discuss in a while. But degraded lands are one of the best hit for agroforestry with close or careful attention, land preparation, fertilization, different models being addressed, you simply can, find way out. So the land degradation, aging of plantations, high dependency on agrochemicals, vulnerability to climate change, price, volatility, and also sometimes, yes, increase in production costs. We all know how difficult it is to find fertilizer these days. And these are some of the problems that, plantations mainly face today. So agroforestry can find some solutions up to a great extent though, right, to find answers for these problems. So agroforestry is a strategy to diversify and regenerate those degraded plantations with a number of benefits while, protecting the environment and the other aspects of that particular plantation. But therefore, I need to bring here, but we really need careful, selection, careful attention, and careful planning on the right model. Therefore, like obviously, we have some practical guidelines, for agroforestry models in different sectors, which we need to follow so that we can see, or we can expect a, say a balance between all these components to make sure your best agroforestry model can be practiced in your plantation. Now, we just discussed what an agroforestry model is. Obviously, it's a land use approach. No, we have that understanding. But remember, it is not only economic benefits that it provides, it also, will give us socio-cultural benefits as well. So it's like, multiple. It provides multiple benefits, through this kind of a project. Okay. Now, the combination of these understory plants or even small trees, the big trees, shade trees, all together create that earlier, what I said, this biodiversity, to bring this microclimate, environment with more or rich, environmental services. So it's very important that we understand what are these specific species that we need to consider when it comes to an agroforestry model, right? So nutrition, recycling, and say, disease and pest suppression, soil and water conservation, and say soil moisture fluctuations, temperature controlling. These are all very important environmental actions or the functions that also should happen in an agroforestry model. So bringing these, conditions to the plantation is exactly the challenge, but, technical models have been proven that, these are all important areas that it could deliver. Now, there are a number of benefits of a well-designed and a well-managed agroforestry system. The problem here is, are we, really there? But if you can really, find out a well-managed, system, right? It reduces dependency on external inputs. Obviously, in particular, what chemicals, agrochemicals, fertilizer, it can reduce these, external inputs. It also increases the resilience, as I told you earlier, resilience, to climate change, or even to any other extreme events, even to floods, even to, droughts, right? The improvement of productivity is one of the key benefits there. The increased biodiversity can be observed in a well-managed agroforestry system, right? And altogether, it, basically, what you call stores carbon, like carbon sequestration is a very important benefit of agroforestry concept. It also improves the working conditions of the workers because, it adds additional benefits. It brings additional income. Sometimes it even brings food for people. Now, a couple of, plantations that we have been working in the recent past, we just, we got to know some of these plants have agroforestry models and they have fruit, actually fruit crops or the food crops. And some of the, maybe part of the yield is being simply shared, among the plantation workers, which is a kind of an additional benefit to them, right? And also it improves the well-being and the productivity of even farm animals, which is true because it creates, it gives more food, it is more lush green, no, right? And it allows, basically the valorization of diverse agricultural products because, it brings the diversity, it creates, it produces different products to the market, and obviously it helps the market stabilization as well in terms of the prices and access to different market segments. So these are all additional benefits that you're going to get through agroforestry systems. But what are the challenges is the biggest question. Now, if it is, so important and so beneficial, I'm sure everybody should be able to do it easily, which is not true again. right? Few challenges I have, taken from a recent study done by Dr. Mariam Pullman, right, coming from the Wageningen University, and they are working with the agroforestry model and the agroforestry project of IUCN, University of Pennsylvania, and Netherlands, embassy. So, according to her, right, we believe that agroforestry systems require extensive knowledge. It needs technical expertise, right? This is where we might not have much. The traditional knowledge might not be sufficient unless you realize the impacts of climate change, and to negate or to fight against what kind of species models that are required is really a challenging solution. So for that we need technical expertise mostly, and careful planning is always needed. Otherwise what happens, we spend and we don't get the benefit. I think most of the plantations face that. So careful planning, designing, and at the same time selecting the right model, which brings more benefits, more money, at the same time which can withstand the regional level or the micro level climatic conditions under particular plantation. And at the same time, economic and operational factors require careful attention, simply because, right, there are a lot of volatilities in the market, a lot of fluctuations, prices, markets, demand and supply. Sometimes these products may have demand, sometimes may not have. So therefore, we need to pick species or the model, the products that really have some market demand, and that should come with the knowledge of both local and international expertise. So this is what we always try to understand. Now, agroforestry models and designs. This is a little challenging area, because as I told you even earlier, I have been telling you from the beginning, if we don't get the right model, if we don't get the right design, obviously we will not get to the final objective, right? We will not get at there. So how do we find the right model? Now, even in our project, where just IUCN has launched with other partners, we have started working with a couple of plantations. I mean, we still don't have a model, because we are learning. We are right now in the baseline. You need to understand the entire context of that particular plantation based on the knowledge only, based on the gaps that you identify, based on the right conditions that you identify. Only you can go for start finding the best model. So therefore, agroforestry models, since they are differ in structure, functionality, diversity, composition, climatic conditions, you name, we really need to consider all these factors and factor into the model that you want to work with, right? Now, time factor is a very big challenge here. Now, it needs time. Some agroforestry models to start bringing say fruits, bringing results. It takes about 3-4 years, sometimes 5-6 years. So how are we going to how do we going to simply understand this cost and benefit? How can we basically wait for maybe invest and wait for a couple of years until you get the benefits? And that is where the investment capacity comes on board, right? So it is you always need to prioritize the main crop. You can't simply forget the main crop. So we are bringing agroforestry models to get the maximum benefit of the main crop, to diversify, to improve the productivity, efficiency, effectiveness of these models. So it is a what do you call it? It is a solution that we need to bring along with the main product in order to bring benefits of this kind of a model. Clear? So the time factor is very important. This is where we need to consider careful selection of both annuals and perennials, so that you can simply come up with the system where you ensure continuous income. This is very important. Maybe initially it might be low, but maybe from the second, third, or the fourth year onwards, according to the model, it should start generating an income which is sufficient to initially to cover the cost first, and then to go for the margins. Clear? And a good understanding of the baseline would be really helpful for that. So starting at the baseline level, you really need technical expertise if you really want to go for a good agroforestry model. In addition to that, there might be also needing the specific measures, some of the measures to restore the soil quality and its functions. Now, there are a lot of parameters that you need to maintain, that you need to monitor, measure, right? It could be done sometimes, weekly or monthly. like, soil quality testing, the water quality testing, right? Even to, pick the numbers or count the numbers of animals, which are, coming to the plantation and move around, right? So there are a lot of, parameters coming under both soil, water, biodiversity, microclimate, climatic conditions. These all have to be monitored and maintained over the years, and then only you realize with the growth of the model that if you see the growth of these parameters, obviously that we can simply understand that the agroforestry model is fitted into the existing climatic condition, and it is now ready to cope further up with the remaining model there, remaining crop there. This is very important. Now there are 4 considerations we have identified through the study of Dr. Miriam, right? There are 4 main considerations for design and replication of an agroforestry model. Number 1 is, as I just told you, selecting the right species. What species, and based on what we need to select them. Then the identification of the right climatic condition. Now, one of the plantation we are working is located over 5,000 feet, mean sea level, right? Above 5,000 feet height. Now here, this is a specific model now, which we need to consider because of the climatic conditions. And at the same time, the availability of information is very important. So therefore, you need to use some of the databases and even digital techniques, the technology, right, in order to go for different combinations, say optimal combination. This is where the moduling part come in. And at the same time, finally, now without everybody's buying in, take part, obviously you can't achieve this final goal. So therefore, the multi-stakeholder participation and actors, participation of all key actors is going to be really, really important, because that is where you get the knowledge pool. That is where you get the knowledge pool. And I might tell you, like, even your plantation worker might have some very good knowledge that he or she can bring to the model. So you simply can't ignore them as well here, right? Now, if you come to the business case, agroforestry business case, it's going to be little, novel now. So this area we haven't touched much, because to invest on an agroforestry system, any investor, in this case, maybe your management, you might think of the cost benefit, analysis. So depending on the cost and the benefit, that is going to incur and to, say, gain, only where you are going to take the final decision. So in the longer term, at least you should see some positive benefits coming up. But which year is the question? Is it in the first year, the second year, the third year, or fourth, like that? So that is why a carefully designed, carefully analyzed cost benefit would be one of the key tools for you to take the decision being an investor, right? Obviously, we know agroforestry will have higher productivity. It will, make the external inputs less, right? It would even, improve the productivity, in terms of the soil quality, the water quality, the biodiversity, the climate resilience, you name. These are all important benefits at the end of the day would convert into the economic performance. And that is why it is going to be really important. And even, you need to invest, like, starting from the planting material, fertilizer, sometimes agrochemical. So you need to invest. There should be an invest to be made, if you want to get a proper agroforestry business model. So it's a business case at the end of the day, right? It's a simple business, like a micro entrepreneur starts a business. So even though it is bigger, but you have to look at it in that business angle, right? And this is where finally I told you economic modeling, right, might help us to understand the best model where you need to simply proceed with. And for that, you may need to test different scenarios, different options, and might need to pick the optimal option rather than saying the best or the worst case scenario, right? The optimal model might have the best benefit in terms of the model that you're going to finalize. Now, we also talk about this integrated agroforestry business cases, right? Now, integration comes up with mostly with the international standards, international access to markets, right? So it's very important that you see whether there are some, say what, collaborative models, collaborative approaches, It could even come from the international private sector audience. It could come from the global brands, global brands who really value agroforestry as a label for their, socio cultural values, or maybe, CSR initiatives, or even green labels and carbon footprints. I mean, these agroforestry can support in this. So how much we are ready to, or how much we have as information to consider this for the futuristic understanding, right? So we see currently a growing number of national and international policy commitments coming up now to support countries with, suitable agroforestry models. I mean, these are important, opportunities that the plantation sector, in particular, tea sector in Sri Lanka, should look into. So if I just, bring a little bit on the futuristic view, we need to understand the major issue that we have is the climate change impact. So as a solution, right, agroforestry can simply have a lot of, potential. It has a lot of potential to improve the resilience to withstand the negative impact of climate change in particular, and also to improve the resilience of degraded landscapes as well, right? So we believe that agroforestry can bring this solution, but I'm always telling you with the right model. Now, if you talk about the impact on biodiversity and environment in particular, right, it has a lot of benefits. Agroforestry and the environment biodiversity are being fully, sort of married, I would say, right? It improves watershed functions in particular. It reduces the land degradation and soil erosion. It also improves the connectivity, and it provides habitat for native biodiversity. So basically, like, just imagine you have a degraded land on a particular place. Now, if you can convert that degraded land into an agroforestry model, obviously you connect the dots. No? You connect the dots between two ends. Sometimes it could even act as corridors, for faunal and floral, advantages, right? It brings, even pollination. It improves the pollination in that area. A lot of benefits in terms of biodiversity and environment. And obviously, as I told you earlier, it improves the carbon storage. It regulates the regional level climate. It improves the resilience to floods and droughts. So these are some of the, direct impacts on biodiversity and environment, which are coming from the right models of agroforestry, right? Now, still the labor shortage is a big issue here, right? So labor shortage in the plantation sector is a common problem now. So one might think even for agroforestry, it's like this. Agroforestry requires, low labor inputs, so that even, when you do this kind of when you select this kind of model, it could even bring, improved productivity, improved efficiencies in terms of overall costs and benefits of the organization. Now, international competitiveness and unstable income in traditional plantation crops is also a common issue or a problem that we have, seen here. But agroforestry can provide some unseen opportunities to address this particular problem. Because if you take, two examples here, what I have given here, like cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, pepper, nutmeg, such as like, these kind of, tree crops in agroforestry obviously can bring a lot of income, a lot of revenue, maybe high revenue if you really, maintain well. And another very good option through agroforestry is that the agrotourism opportunities, ecotourism opportunities. In fact, I have already spoken with Anuruddha, and you all have, I think, Halgolla plantation. We are about to start working in it. And one of the end goal of Halgolla biodiversity assessment that has been already proposed is to look for ecotourism opportunities there. May not be directly through agroforestry there, but when it comes to biodiversity or maybe climate conditions, the proven positive climatic conditions in a plantation, we can simply consider it for the opportunity of ecotourism or agrotourism. I think this is a very good example, very good opportunity through agroforestry. The two plantations that we have already selected to work with all together anyway, right? And we are now trying to see whether we can bring ecotourism to these two, plantations and through agroforestry. So these are novel opportunities that we can always look into. And another very good opportunity is that agroforestry can support, earning national and international certifications. Could be green label, it could be CSR initiatives, as I told you. So these are some value additions for your rest of the products in the plantation. So we are hopeful through agroforestry, we may in a position to bring those major benefits. Now, if you can adapt agroforestry, it will impact climate change by various ways. I have already told them, but I have just highlighted them again simply because like agroforestry is a model to combat climate change, especially for a country like Sri Lanka. So I'm not going to read everything here again because I just wanted to highlight how important it is. But now you and I can't do all these things together. We need the external party support as well in order to improve and implement agroforestry models in the country, especially the policy support. It could be from the government in particular. So we would like to see some of the regulations and legislations are being changed or maybe revised to support agroforestry establishment in the plantation sector, right? We need a lot of awareness and capacity. Sometimes now I'm just talking, I also speak only a little here, but there may be some people in the audience who are not that conversant with the subject of agroforestry. Sometimes one or two people may be listening to agroforestry only today, right? This may be the truth. So we need a lot of understanding, a lot of awareness, a lot of buying in, right? So therefore, a lot of promotions need to be carried out by the say policymakers in order to push or promote agroforestry among the plantation sector. And also planning for climate smart agroforestry landscapes is also a measure or a policy level change that we look for in terms of implementing agroforestry. We also would like to see there are some no regret options so that you are compelled to take the decision of going for agroforestry. And at the same time, what kind of programs or the adjustment programs that you can bring in order to say establish agroforestry in plantations as a climate mitigation or climate adaptation technique. So these are some of the policy level measures that we would like to see from the people who are really revolving around. And if that comes, obviously you are stronger, we are stronger, we can go for agroforestry much better. So my final two slides, actually, I would like to share some of the key messages coming out of this recent study, which are all important for us to open up our ears and eyes, right? It's a good eye opener. We all believe now agroforestry can restore productivity of degraded lands. And obviously, tea, coconut, rubber are one of the are few of good examples in this country. Agroforestry can make production systems more resilient to climate change. That's another key message you're going to take from this presentation. Agroforestry system designs obviously depend on specific conditions of the plantation, very specific conditions of the plantation, because you can't have one particular design for all, right? You cannot have a blueprint. There are no blueprints when it comes to agroforestry. Even in the same plantation, two locations will have two models. That's the simplest scenario that I can tell you. Now, market connections, labor availability, mechanization, technology are also critical, right, for successful agroforestry designs, which you and I need to understand now. Agroforestry can be complemented by different sustainable practices, especially waste recycling to produce organic fertilizers, integrated pest management, or even like biodiversity related different practices. These are all important complementary practices that agroforestry can be established better. And also the development of agroforestry models will always be dynamic because it requires different resources, and there might be even little competition, right, for space, light, nutrients, water, you name. These are all important elements that agroforestry needs, but they need to be competed with the main crop that we need to understand. Then the sustainable business models, I told you, like obviously there is no blueprint here, but it should combine it should be combined with different incentives and mechanisms to overcome various barriers that we might face in the plantation. Otherwise, it will not work. Public-private partnerships would be an ideal solution for agroforestry. And that is where you need to consider both local and international, partnerships. You need to find different options, different models, different markets, different even, production systems, other production systems. So you can come up with partnerships. You can tie up with and find best ways to bring products to the marketplace. Diversification of tropical tree crop systems requires anyway some cross-sectoral collaboration, especially participatory approaches, on-farm piloting. These all have to be done. Even baseline surveys, very important for us to start with. And finally, obviously, as you all believe in, very close monitoring and evaluation by considering a number of parameters which would help us in understanding either the models are on the successful end or the failing end. So M&E is also very important for us to consider. So these are some of the take-home messages that I believe, right, that I need to share with you right now, which is coming from one of the recent study, as I just told you, it's a study done in the agroforestry project, which we have already started. So thanks to the Wageningen University team, led by Dr. Mariam, right, so that we are bringing here, from the system to share further and to learn further. So this is a learning and a sharing event, so that I just thought of you sharing, these important points so that you and I both can learn further. So that's all for the time being I have, and I think, it would be helpful. There have been, it would have brought some interest, some knowledge, so that we can talk maybe for a couple of more minutes. And with the time that we have, this is all I can do for the time being, but then we are available to discuss, to share any given time in future. So please let us know from IUC, and then we are ready to proceed further. Thank you so much. I hope this is good enough. Anuruddha, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nalin. I think it's a great eye-opening for all the plantation managers who have joined here. Because as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is not a strange concept, but only thing that the awareness and the knowledge has to be streamlined and put into a required framework for everyone to understand on the common universal language what we are discussing at all. So today, our aim on this session is also to get the expertise knowledge from you and the IUC, and where you all are the main component, the key players who got involved this project and the this particular subject. So thank you very much once again on behalf of our managing director and the director CEOs and the entire management team of Harris Plantations to do this informative and very educative presentation, Nalin. So without wasting much time from the participants, I would like to open the session for Q&A. If there are anything that you can raise, you can ask from Mr. Nalin Hunasinghe and also Mr. Nalin Pereira also there. So both are from IUCN. So you can raise any question. It's open for the Q&A. Till we get a direct questions, Nalin, there was another question to chat box to personally to me. Let me start from that. There's a question from the one of our team member. Even though the concept of agroforestry system is famous in various countries, in Sri Lanka, the process of practical application of this concept is extremely slow, especially in plantations. Is it because of the lack of awareness or the communication or the lack of communication strategy, or because of the benefits are lower than the expectation? What are the reasons behind that we are not getting in deeply into these systems, especially in Sri Lankan scenario?
That's a very pertinent question, and that's maybe one of the common questions that we all have, because We have the knowledge up to a certain extent on what agroforestry is and the benefits of it. Even today we spoke about it, but it's a common question, then why not we implement? I agree with the person who wrote the question to you. There is a big issue in terms of the knowledge and awareness. It is true. At the same time, people don't even, even an attitude problem, simply because there is very less proven models. That is one of the reasons why we are not going for it. Like, we don't see much models that have been proven and bringing more benefits today. But I would like to bring one good example from the coconut sector, right? In Sri Lanka, like, even I can tell the name, this is Kurunegala Plantations, have now started diversifying. They've gone into different agroforestry models, but still under different levels, monoculture, and then maybe with the monocrop, with the main crop, they have gone into always with another single crop adder. But still, they have started gaining a lot of profits now. So that itself has brought them to go for further and further high level agroforestry models. So likewise, it's important that we get convinced first. For that, we need to try somewhere. No one will try without proper knowledge, proper awareness, and the proper and the proven business models, proven systems actually. And this is what we are lacking at the moment. Even though we have certain systems worked in the country, maybe we have not communicated much enough. So we have a lot of scientists, researchers working in the area. We need more of them to come to the ground level and to make the systems of make the people aware, managements aware, so that we can find better models for better gains. I think that is where we need to work, Anuruddha. So his question is very valid, but we need more knowledge, more understanding, and more support from even the third party like government and other policymakers to bring the right knowledge to the ground. Thank you. So my colleague Nalin also there, I see he's there. So if Nalin, if you want to add, always, he's our technical person. So Nalin can bring a couple of more knowledge or information as well.
Yes, Nali, I'm here. If there's anything related, especially biodiversity aspects in agroforestry system and even in our plantation, I can always hear.
Thank you, Nalin, for that valuable input. Thank you, Nalin. And are there any questions from the participants? I think there will be a lot of questions from you, definitely. You can raise directly from Mr. Nalin Munsing.
Hello, sir. I'm Vijit from the US state, sir.
Yeah, Vijit, you can raise your question to Mr. Munsing. Yes.
So my question is, how is agroforestry difference from intercropping, sir?
Oh, right. Again, a good question. Like intercropping and agroforestry, like I would start with intercropping. So intercropping in simple terms, like in a main crop or in a the major plantation. So in between crops, you start cultivating the second crop or the third crop, and that's just intercropping, right? But agroforestry is really more, it's beyond intercropping, because it creates more environmental services. It requires maybe more, attention to bring more values. Now, in intercropping, it's basically the productivity. You get more of that particular crop or the product. But in agroforestry, what happens? You get a number of services where you will not get in an intercropped plantation, especially the biodiversity values, ecosystem services, microclimatic conditions, right? The so-called resilience, we have been talking about the resilience for climate change impacts, and that is coming through agroforestry in particular. So likewise, it is a more rich, it is a more rich model, which brings a lot of benefits over the time. It will also bring more revenues, more even income to all the participants, all the stakeholders of the model, just rather than talking of a simple intercropping model. So that's the difference between intercropping and agroforestry at this moment. Maybe Nalin can bring a little bit more on the biodiversity values of the two. Nalin?
Yes, so there are some valid point of this agroforestry, and plant that intercropping. So yes, there are some overlapping areas between agroforestry and intercropping, but as in the system mentioned, there's a word forestry. That means we are doing agricultural system more related to the incorporate to the forestry system. For example, so that's an extreme example of this agroforestry system is analog forestry. Is typically similar to forest, but we are using the economical and environmentally important crops in analog forestry systems. But there are some overlapping areas, but still there are more environmental and biological values in these agroforestry systems. It's not.
Thank you, Nalin, and thank you, Nalin, for that value addition to that question. And I think there are some more questions from the participants. You can utilize this opportunity to clear some of the doubts you have on this concept already. So you can raise any concerns, questions. You can discuss with Mr. Nalin Munasinghe and Mr. Nalin Pereira from IUCN.
Maybe, until someone speaks out, I'll give you one more point, Anuruddha, that might be important for your managers to consider. In case if you really want to go further diversification or maybe later convert into agroforestry, it's very important that you understand this cost benefit. You start with that. I mean, obviously it's a profitable business. You are into rupees and cents. So consider that from the beginning. That is, it's still worth considering that. And that is where the baseline would be really important. If you want to, come up with a good model, you really need to know all, expenses, current situation of that particular degraded or the land that you have, selected for agroforestry testing or agroforestry, establishment. So try to analyze whatever the factors that are important. I told you economic, social, cultural, and the biodiversity, soil, water related all, right? You can, bring the numbers at the same time, you can bring the values of it, right? And then once you start agroforestry, every time interval, you start measuring them again and again. Then only you will get convinced, right? Now, mostly what happens, you first start spending a lot, buying plants, land preparation, buying all these inputs, etc. You need them. But if you do it without any baseline, without any record, obviously what happens, you really don't know whether this, these inputs could be able to be transferred or converted into what, money or revenues later on. So it's very important you start with a good or a strong baseline and monitor closely and see whether your model, brings more value. It is not only the yield that you are going to pluck. It's not only the amount of fruits you are going to pluck. It's also the values of all other ecosystem benefits that is going to be generated through agroforestry model. And that could directly impact your main crop as well. So sometimes your main tea crop also will be grown. It will be high. The yields would be high. Like continuous water flows might start coming from your say the catchment areas. Now we never measure that. We never even consider that. And these are all benefits that are coming out of agroforestry. Say you spend 100 rupees, but you pluck fruits of that agroforestry garden maybe only value 50 rupees. But you have forgotten it has created another 100, 200 all rupees of entire agroforestry plant, the model, and that had come into your main crop, in other means. Now, this is something that we are very much lacking, and we don't have expertise either everywhere. And that is where a project like even agroforestry in Sri Lanka that we have just started need to bring, so that every plantation can use these templates, say measures, models, so that you all can, start using them. So that's another message, Anuruddha, for your team. Thanks.
Nalin, taking something out from that, your elaboration, I think there were few comments personally I received. I will collaborate everything and put this question. Now, analyzing, scrutinizing what you mentioned just now and the Nalin, what just he added recently, promoting agroforestry systems in existing plantations, the most critical juncture is that we are unstuck with this cost benefit analysis that we are expecting the benefits from the first day itself. But you have answered that if you mix it properly, because this is another area that people may think that the sustainability, the approach of sustainability is only to protect the resources what we have. Actually, it is not the meaning that we have to utilize resources effectively. So that what all sustainability says. So coming that the concept of sustainability into agroforestry, when you are applying those crops and the different other areas into this model, how can we ensure from the very beginning itself some sort of income to mitigate some sort of issues related to this cost benefit analysis? How is it only mixing the annual and short-term, mid-term and long-term crops, so getting some other inputs into the system? What because as we know that there are no universal framework, but how best that we can minimize this confusion?
Yeah, I think partly I have addressed, but then it's again important to bring another couple of more points into it. Obviously, the answer, in my opinion, at least, is a phased approach. Right? That's what I said earlier. You simply, can't exactly like, say you clear the entire land and you convert that to agroforestry. I mean, you can still do it, but you should have a lot of money. And it's a huge risk. And no one will take that kind of a risk in a profit-oriented business, as far as I understand, unless you are ready to, go for that investment. So therefore, it's important, as you said, for us to go for a phased approach. And that is where the model starts. So, in a phased approach, you even need to select crops, right? Select, trees that can give benefits in the shorter run, first. And that is where the annuals come first, right? Obviously, depending on the, microclimatic conditions and regional, climatic conditions as well. But that is how you need to start. So then also with available resources, your available labor, if the available labor can do a small plot with, annuals, the cost is less. Maybe the benefit would be high. So likewise, you slowly start, expanding it into the next levels and the third and fourth level like that. So the phased approach with plan or the carefully planned input supply will definitely take you to the, minimum risk with maximum benefit. It is very important to look at that level, Anuruddha. One other, answer to the same question. You can find good partners, and this is where the third party support, needed. Like, it could be not only the financial support, but also you can get the support, the market support, access to markets. Like you also can come up with this, such successful concessional, schemes where you start, giving products to those, markets. So it's kind of a, what do you call, forward contracting system, you're trying to bring here. So these kind of mini models or mini concepts will definitely help you for you to go for a sustainable, plan for good agroforestry models.
Nalin, can I add?
Please do, Nalin.
Yeah, please do, Nalin.
So we were discussed why most of this agroforestry project is still not in agroforestry system not introduced to Sri Lanka. I think one of the reason is we have not started the agroforestry system in right scale. For example, one agroforestry system may need to introduce 10 or 20 plant species, but most of the agroforestry piloting system start with a small scale. But in order to get the good income, we need to at least start with the considerable land extent. For example, if you have a 20 or 50 hectares of agroforestry system, so with these 10 or 20 diverse crops, so we can, the plantation can earn good income. So otherwise it will fail, because 20 or 15 years back, we tried to introduce this agroforestry system into the small scale farmers. But at the end, we realized that it will not affect, or it will not come to the this ground with the small scale farmers, because this agroforestry system with this 1 or 2 acre land, they will not get the continuous good income from these diverse crops. So it's needed to, at least if we are trying to do the piloting, considerable extent of land need to be bring into this agroforestry system in order to get the sustainable and good income. And again, we have to select the right species, right kind of crop species for agroforestry system. At least it's needed to identify 2 or 3 high income species. For example, one of the possible species is cardamom, but it's needed to grow cardamom under the forest or good shade, but it's needed to wait for 10-15 years until get that shade. So we need to plantation needs to come with a good plan, good and sustainable plan in order to go with this agroforestry system. At this time, it's challenging task. That's what I want to highlight this point.
Thank you, Nalin, and thank you, Nalin. Any questions? Any more questions from the team?
Yeah, I am Dulshankaya. Good evening. I have a small question. Can you just explain me how does agroforestry maintain sustainability?
You want to know how agroforestry can be made sustainable, is it?
Maintain.
Yeah, maintain sustainability. Right. If I understood your question properly, okay. If you want, so say you introduce an agroforestry model, right? How it could contribute to the sustainability of the business, I guess, at the end of the day. But first of all, as I told you earlier, maybe you need to make sure that the model is sustained, right? That is where the phased approach that we introduced may be much better. Now, once you start doing it, you will start realizing different other approaches or maybe other important elements that needs to be considered in the selected model. As I told you, like since we don't have universal models here, we have those 5 major types being practiced in the whole world. Even those types are very much different from one place to another. So when you start your own model, you will need to have a very good database, very good monitoring and evaluation system. So through those systems, you start understanding which areas to be adjusted, which new areas to be considered. Sometimes even fertilizer mixing. For an example, you take the right mixture of fertilizer application. Maybe initially, even though you thought a particular mix, maybe while you start or once you started, you will realize that it could be either less or more. So likewise, to make it sustain, you need continuous monitoring, at least in the first few years, because you are learning, because you are changing, because you are adjusting to make sure that it is the best model suited to the right condition depending on the selected land. And in that way only, you can make it sustain initially. Then once it starts producing, so after a certain time, the model starts bringing products to it. Now there, the sustainability depends on how you are going to utilize it. So the utilization plan has to be sustained thereafter, right? For an example, you should have identified right markets, right channels, right links. So you need to find out how to reduce the post harvest losses, right? How to correct the at the value addition, because value addition is something that is really important for agroforestry based products. And we see in the world, there's a lot of value addition products coming out of these, agroforestry systems. But we need to learn, we need to find it out, and just to make sure the right product is being marketed or targeted to the right segment. So likewise, the entire value chain has to be, mapped and has to be considered. So every actor and every phase of the value chain has to be monitored and supported. In that way, you would see a very sustainable, agroforestry model after a couple of years, at least initially. But then thereafter, after, say, once the products are in the marketplace, you would realize how best it could be further sustained depending on the demand and the supply of the marketplace. Hope I answered, that's the way I personally believe to go.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dulshankar. Thank you, Nalin. And there's a question, Nalin. Now, when we talk about the agroforestry models especially in high grown areas, the upcountry areas, maybe certain restrictions from the policy at the moment in the country is always a challenging task. For an example, if you take harvesting over 5,000 elevation is another problem at the moment. So if you go for the species under silviculture and the various forest species and all, how can we come over these problems specifically in the highland areas in agroforest systems?
Yeah, I think, Nalin can start and then I'll add my points thereafter. Nalin, this area of specialty. Nalin, just, start so that I'll add a couple of more points to that.
Yes, as Mr. Anuruddha mentioned, still there are some gray areas in policy and even in our laws. When we introduce to this agroforestry system, we have to go with these existing laws and policies, but there may be in future, especially. So when we now we are working with this existing agroforestry project, we are working with the government. We are just starting to working with the government, our government stakeholders. In future, with this expansion of this agroforestry system, we can introduce these new policies and new acts, especially related to the agroforestry in highland areas and even other part of the country. Especially in agroforestry system, one crop is the timber. So if we introduce a timber in highland areas, in future, when it's come to the harvesting time, as you mentioned, there will be some laws and policies stop to this harvesting. So in order to mainstream in agroforestry in highland areas, yes, I agree with you. We have to work with the government relevant segment to introduce new laws, policies, and act into this agroforestry. Nalin?
So I'll add a couple of, maybe two more points, Anuruddha. This is very important, I guess. Initially, in such elevations with government or legislative constraints, one good option is to start with the native species, native forest species. That's very interesting. And, for that, you need to maintain a very good nursery, I guess. And we have experience with a couple of, other projects that are used in lakes. One is this Kannelia restoration, land restoration site, right? We maintain our own nursery with, most of the plants coming from the same forest, right? So we need to, actually, we are planning to even implement that. We need to, practice that kind of a model initially, and then to make sure that, even that area with minimum disturbance to the environment, that you go for your own native species, right? But still, as Nalin said, yes, as even you said, there might be, legislations, and that is where the stakeholder participation is very important here. And in our project, we have just, started working on this national steering committee, where the national level policymakers, legislators are all involved in this. So for all good decisions, I guess we all need to work, while all the measures to protect the environment is being fully harnessed. So this is how we are going to do. But it's a very good question. He asked area where we need to further try out, maybe research and learn as well. But there is a way to start with still. Thank you, Anuruddha.
Thank you, Nalin. Thank you, Nalin. Are there any questions? I can allow one more questions to us. Okay. If not, Nalin, I will take this juncture to wrap up the session. I think we had a very fruitful debate and discussion, very friendly debate and very fruitful discussion on this particular subject, because this is an emerging trend and emerging topic at the moment, especially in terms of Sri Lankan scenario as well. So a lot of projects are coming, a lot of thought leaders are there. They are the key players in this scenario, and a lot of people are trying, doing R&D on this area. So I think Harris Plantations also, I think this is a really good eye-opening that taking these valuable points at where we can think of developing our own agroforestry models, whatever within our plantations, in order to improve the productivity from the existing levels. So I think with that take-home message, I would like to thank you again on behalf of our Managing Director, Dr. Roshan Rajore. Nalin, actually, he was with us, but unfortunately for another discussion, he had to shift from here to another meeting. So he passed me a message to convey his great appreciation to you and Nalin, that representing IUCN, to conduct this valuable session today under Hellis Plantation's Digital Learning Series, even with an expert session number 19. So on behalf of our MD, Dr. Rajore, and entire team of Hellis Plantations, Nalin, thank you. I would like to thank you very much. I know this hard time, even very busy schedules. You have allocated nearly about 1.5 hours. We have spent 1.5 hours with us, the Hellis Plantations team. And thank you once again. It's really greatly appreciated. And also Nalin, joining from UIN to contribute to valuable points to this valuable discussion and value addition to the existing plantation model. So we have a small token of appreciation, Nalin. Unfortunately, this digital platforms, we are away from human touch, punch, everything. So I can only display, but I will ensure that we both will receive a wonderful gift from Hellis Plantations. And once again, thank you very much for coming and delivering this great speech. Thank you. And also I would like to thank the plantations, especially the Kalanwell Plantation IT team, providing all the support to build up this virtual platform, especially Susanta, Ravindu. So without their support, I think it's not possible. So thank you for them as well, and also for participating in this session. The Managing Director of Hellis Plantations and the Director CEOs of 3 plantation companies and entire management team. I would like to thank you all as well. And once again, thank you, Nalin. Have a great evening. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you so much.
So we'll wind up session number 19 now, and hope to see you end of this month with the session number 20 of Hellis Plantations Digital Learning Series, even with an expert with another interesting topic. It will be another different topic. So have a great evening. Good night. Thank you.